Hi guys, I am back again. We finished last time with building the prompt model end to end, and so this time we're going to build the business expense model. And I suppose this is going to be a three-part instead of a two-part. All right, I'm going to try and move along efficiently as best as I can. Okay, so we need to create a model for business expense. So I'm going to go to models or hit Control-Shift-M. I'm going to create a model, business expense. This one is going to be a web source. That'll probably change to remote. Everything else is local, remote, and then I got this one sort of odd duckling that's web. It'll be obvious though. The row limit I'm going to set to 5,000 because maybe we have a lot of business expenses, and we will include a local table. There are cases where you don't need a local table, and that just means a local worksheet. If you have like a model, like say states, where you have the 50 states, there is no field that you're going to save into for the state model, and so I don't know. It's just basically a state would be a completely inert reference model. All right, create. For business expense, the two local fields are going to be the ones that ChatGPT saves its categorization cost category and its follow-up question, if any. All right, cool. The model is made. Let's go get some fields. It comes with fields, remember, but they're just throwaways. For business expense, all of our fields pretty much are going to be remote fields. They're going to correspond to the data headers in the CSV file that we have been importing. We will have two local fields though. All right, so let's see. We're going to need transact date, vendor name, description, and amount. And let's migrate those. One recalculate, it doesn't notice anything. The second one, it'll get it. Bunch of column inserts. Okay? And I actually don't want this dummy remote. I'm going to delete it. Do the same thing. This one's a delete. Migrations just refers to adding or removing a column. All right. Let's go check it out. No, not right now. Here's where I meant to go. Okay, description. This is a text field, a char field. I don't want to do the other ones. We can just use variant field. That's fine. Okay. Oh, yes. Let's make our local fields now. So on the local side, we are going to need the cost category, and we are going to need a field called follow-up question. So if ChatGPT is classifying the expenses and something is unclear, it's going to flag it. We're going to tell it in the prompt to flag it as needs context, and then it will provide a follow-up question to sort of explain why it feels ambiguous. All right, same drill as before. Migrate, delete this guy. Good point to save. Okay, so we do want to add some validation for the cost category because that's going to be restricted to these choices over here. Let's do it. So these choices, this is the choices cost category range. You see it there. We still have a little test range over here, I think. Let's take this. Shortcut for data validation. Or actually here, I need to set it to a custom validated. When you set it to custom validated, you can put any data validation that you want in this top data cell, and it will it will enforce it. So if you try to like, you have an object and you try to say expense dot cost category equals bananas, it's going to say that's not an allowed choice. So it's a way for a means of enforcement. Okay. There's some built-in validation. Let me show you here. If I hit this validate workbook, we have one error, and that error is going to be custom validated field type should have some data validation in the top cell. This is normal if you just added the field. To rectify, go to this worksheet, tells you exactly where, and add some data validation. So Alt DL, shortcut to open this guy up. List, and it's this equal sign, then the range. Okay. Got it. Saving. Okay. Let's see. I had we're gonna follow the script here. I had some notes here for this. When the chatbot flags and expenses needs context, it will also provide a follow-up question. I was thinking last night about this. I told you that the notes were not important, but I think that the notes could be important because I think that if we're trying to be able to set this up so that we can make it really portable to move it into another language or into a web server, the notes could help with the conversion because the LLM we can give it all of this information and say convert this code, get me over to Python. And I think probably even comments, anything that you add to the code, you should be thinking in your head, not just for other developers that will be reading it, but for if an LLM was reading it, how could you sort of steer the model? And if you're thinking about that now, if it's just in the back of your mind, it might be a good thing. So I wanted to take back what I said yesterday. All right, so if we don't have any records in here for business expense. So if we did, we could go to the edit view and you would see the choices were restricted to the cost category. So we're gonna build an import script. And I'll show you how to basically take in data from, we have this CSV file over yonder. Okay, so this is data that ChatGPT, I asked it to just make up fake expenses for me. It gave me a bunch of expenses. I wish it hadn't made like the longest IDs in the world, but it did. All right, so let's demonstrate an import here. It's code here. So again, I'm trying to save us a little bit of time here. We get the database using our helper function. And the way this works is that we have a collection and it's full of dictionaries. And each dictionary represents one row inside of the data file. So we're just going to scratch tests, import this. So create one dictionary, add these fields, which correspond exactly with our remote fields here. And notice that we're putting in an ID field. For a local model like prompt, we don't get to decide the ID. The add-in decides. But when it's a remote model, it has to mirror the ID of the remote source. That way, if you sync it up later or you change, you go onto the website and update some record, and then you want to re-import it in your workbook, it's going to check and see, does that ID exist? If that ID is already in the workbook, it will update the existing row to have the latest data. If it does not exist in the workbook, it will create a new row. All right, so we create one dictionary, load it. Another dictionary, load it. This is just a little print just to see what a dictionary looks like. And then we load both of these, both of the dictionaries we load into the collection. And then on the DB, we just call this ingest external records method. And finally, just like with the chat comp, there's like a way that we can display like the token and the basic information about our request to the LLM. We have the same thing for this ingest. So I'm just going to run this. Okay. Let's run it again, actually. So you can see this time it modified too, because both of them are already here. I can trick the system. Let's make this ID into 4. Okay, so now it's going to note that 1 it knows is already there, and it's just going to update it. Maybe like make that number a little bigger. And 4 it's never seen before, so it'll add a new row. Okay. All right, so with that little example in mind, let's go a little bit. We're going to go a little bit lateral here because we need when you're building imports, you want to be able to like quickly clear the data out, import it again, clear it out, import it again. Like you want to be able to iterate quickly when you're developing it. So we're actually I usually go backwards. I build reset scripts first. Reset scripts are one of the first things I build, just because I want to be able to just get it out quickly and iterate quickly. Insert module. Before I name it, I'm gonna hit reset workbook. And it's gonna say no reset procedures detected. Search criteria for this runner are module prefix, reset, procedure prefix, reset underscore. It gives you a little example. So this thing is scanning for any functions that match that description. So we're going to name this module anything that starts with reset. So I'm going to do reset workbook. The reason is you could say reset business expense, but there's just not going to be that much stuff to reset. So at the current time, I feel like everything that we're going to need to reset can just fit in reset workbook. If this module were to get really, really big, then we would break it apart. But let's cross that bridge when we don't get there. All right, so we need a sub public sub reset underscore business expense system. I'll keep it kind of broad because maybe there's other stuff that we need to reset. To my knowledge, there's not, but. And then I'll do it I'll break it out a little bit. Dim db as class db, set db equal to get db underscore, control space, so I can just see it's this one. All right, db.record count, I'll hit F5, 3 records, okay, that looks good. And then we can just call db.delete all record rows. Our message box right after. All right, there's 3. All the rows are gone. So, as before, we can play the Tetris game. We don't really need this variable. I put it there as training wheels for you, but I'm taking it away now. I'm going to replace it right here. So we're just going to chain it. We're calling this function, which returns the database, so it'll resolve to the database, and then we're going to call this function, delete all record rows, which does what it advertises. All right, let's make sure it works. Go here. Okay. And then let's try and clear through here. Done. All right, so now we can just import reset, which if you're building an import script for the first time, will probably be useful. All right, I'm inserting another module. I'm going to call this one imports. Okay. Public sub import business.
This might answer your question. In 2015, the United States' import was $2,786 billion.
Alexa, stop. She just told me that the total imports for the United States in 2016. She's always listening. All right, so what we want to do is open up that file. We're going to there's a lot of different ways that you could do an import, all right? Anything that, I'm just going to choose one. Please don't think this is the only way to do it. So we're going to need the file path where the CSV lives. I'm going to do the usual thing I do so that we have something to put on message boxes in the title bar. and we need to get the file path from the user. So there's probably like whole Excel tutorials out there about how to work with like the file selector, but I don't think that's a good use of your time. So the add-in has a bunch of prompt for file open, CSV, workbook, XLSM, text, and then there's file save. Those are different. But we want to do file open CSV because that's a CSV file. We don't have an initial path. All right, and then let's just message box file path. Okay. Am I leaking anything here? Hopefully not. Leaking is like if I'm showing something on my screen that I'm not supposed to. It's called like leaking. Classifier tutorial stash. All right, cool. So I'm gonna select this, and it gives me the path. Great. So if I had hit cancel, the file path is blank. That'll matter in a minute. In fact, in the interest of keeping us moving along, I'm just going to do this. If file path equals blank, then message box import cancel VBA information owner. Say bypass if user cancels the file dialog. Good time to save. All right. In every other script that we've written so far, we've always just passed for when we're calling an add-in function and it asks as a parameter for host workbook, we've just been passing this workbook like this. In this case, we're going to have two workbooks in this script. One of them is this workbook, the WB host. Set WB host to this workbook. And the other one is the data. So we're going to open up that CSV file in another workbook. So because there's two workbooks involved here, we don't want to risk getting confused about what is what. We're just going to explicitly call them both out. All right. Workbook, open, save. This is another add-in one. What workbook open safe does is there's some really peculiar things that can happen when you're opening a workbook, and I discovered one of them. This is when I said in the very first video that Excel has a bad rap for certain things, and that there was some truth to that. I noticed like we're gonna put a shortcut for this import, a keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-I, and this import script was not working when I did Control-Shift-I, and I like dug deep into it, and it turns out that if you have a shortcut and it opens up another workbook, and you use Control and Shift is part of the shortcut keyboard pattern. Well, it just so happens that if you hold Shift when opening your workbook, it puts it in like safe mode or break mode, or I don't know what it is. But due to that like extreme collision of events, like it would just freeze, and I like couldn't believe it. So there's like a way to get around it, and I just went ahead and did workbook open safe, because when I want to open a workbook, I want to just open it. It also checks if like the workbook is already open, and if it is already open, it won't open it again. So it just, these are like little things that can just dirt that gets in your path. And I'm assuming that you're operating, on limited time, and you want to make the most of your time. So I'm trying to provide a tool that like clears all this crap out of your way. Okay, so let's just run it and see what we get. Do the truncated one. Maybe this one will open faster. It's just like a shorter amount of rows. Okay, it opens it. Great. We might as well go ahead and we'll clean up here. That's fine. We won't. We're gonna close it at the end though, and we're gonna try and make it so it's not visible, so the user doesn't see it. All right. So let's see if we can get a cell in there. Dim datasheet as worksheet. Set datasheet equal to WB data. Worksheets 1. Dim data cell, let's say data corner cell as range. Set data corner cell equal to WB datasheet.cells11. Notice these are both one base. Like if I threw a 0 in here, it would say, I don't know, something. It would error in some manner. And same for here for cells, like 0, 0. That would also error. It's a little weird. Sometimes you're dealing with things that are one base. They start at 1, and other things are 0 base. So like cell 1, 1 is right here. Cell 2, 2 is right here. The first one is the row, and then the second is the column. I think it's always a row column. Whether you're dealing with offset, whether you're dealing with cells, it's always a row column. Data corner cell dot interior dot color equals VB green. F5, run the script. Go truncate it again. There it is. Okay. I have high confidence that we have the corner cell. All right. We're going to meet another one of the cast of characters, if you will. The named array. Dim nr as named array. Set nr equal to create underscore named array. Named array is another creature of the add-in. It was originally something that I just wanted to use on the add-in side for, for myself. But it was just so useful. I decided that I need to put it. I need to just make it part. I needed it on the host side, so I exposed it, and now you can use it too. There are two ways to create one. One is if you know the range name. We've made a few range names. If you have a corner cell with a name, you can just pass it the name and the workbook. It can figure it out. Or we can just pass in the range directly. So we definitely don't have any name ranges in that CSV file. So we're going to be passing in that corner cell that we just made green. Message box nr.total data rows. Let's see. For each x in nr.get column headers. I'm going to also print out the column headers because we're going to need them in about 5 seconds. All right, 18 rows. That looks good. There's 18 data rows because this top one is just a header. And these are the column headers. So let's just grab these guys and throw them in here. Notice how the date is capitalized. It's not capitalized here. That's because like Excel, date is a keyword, and so it's automatically, it thinks I've like made a typo and it's correcting it for me, but it's not actually uppercase. All right, so let's iterate. Let's loop through the rows. All right. Oh, I gotta watch out because my picture's down here, isn't it? I was watching one of the other videos and I saw that my picture was covering it up. Go over here. All right, dim row number as long for row number equals 1 to nr.total data rows. Next row number. This is the other main loop construct in VBA. I think so far every for loop we've done has been for each, cat in db.getAll records, whatever. So this is for each loop, and this is just a for loop. Oftentimes you could use either one. And in some cases you can save a line. Some cases you just can't actually. But anyways. Right now, we're definitely using this one. So let's make sure we got it. There they are. Okay? So we need to be able to get these values out. So let's go ahead and we'll just try, what do we know we're going to need? We're emulating closely what we just did here. So we're going to need to make a dictionary for each row, and we're going to need to fill it up with the values for that row. And then we'll just feed that dictionary into a collection. That's all we're gonna do. Debug.print nr.getValue by row number. Give it the row number and the name of the header. So how about vendor? Vendor will do this. Clear this, run it again. Cool, those are the vendors. So we're reading that data in. So let's go ahead and create a dictionary, dim record dict as dictionary. Finally, we hit a place where it is this would be very dangerous, not dangerous, but to use the one-liner syntax, auto instantiation. Is dangerous here. Instead, we're going to say dim record dict as dictionary. I suppose sometime in a different video, maybe like the X-Files, I could show you the perils of what it would do in this situation. But anytime you're reusing the same dictionary over and over again in the same function, the one-line thing will burn you really badly. Like old values will stick in there. I don't exactly remember, but I remember that it hurt. Set record dict equal to new dictionary. So each time that we come through each loop, we're going to reset the dictionary, and then we're just going to say record dict.add. Let's just do ID first. I want you to see another way to add things into a dictionary besides the add method. You can also just do sorry. Alright, so we have ID. ID is done. Transact date. What are our other fields? I think they're all the same except for vendor is different. Transact date is different too, but description will be the same. ID, transact date, vendor name, description, amount. Date, vendor, description, amount. So these values here, like vendor versus vendor name, this is the one that's in the CSV file, the data header. This is our actual field inside of here. All right, we're gonna need dim web records. This one can be a one-liner. Yeah, so you can assign a dictionary value directly like this, or you can do it using the add method. The add is just it takes two parameters, the key and the value. In this case, this is the key, and then this is the value. I usually use add. I like add because if you try to do add in a dictionary and you've already added that key, it will error. It will say key already added. And sometimes it's helpful. It helps me catch mistakes. So I usually try to use this one unless I have a reason to. Like for example, to show you. All right. Now down here, we need the database. Let's get it. DB equal to get DB. Business expense, dim result as result, ingest record, set result equals DB dot. Ingest records and the web records. Great time to save. All right, let's check it out. "101 records created." Want to do it again? Reset. I'm sorry about this message box. My memory's sometimes like a goldfish. I keep meaning to get rid of it and it keeps coming back. Alright, my last tip on the imports is, see this import canceled? If I hit cancel, in my experience, that just gets, oh wow, I forgot to, first of all, I forgot to say exit sub. Notice there can only be one end sub. That's the very end sub. If you want to bypass early, I call it like a manhole return, because like the Ninja Turtles, you know how they escape through the manholes and teleport? It just like takes us out of the function. Then it's exit. If this was a function, it would be exit function and exit sub. And it'll probably, if I tried to put function here, it would probably get mad at me. Yeah. All right. Let's get out of this. Let's get rid of this green. Saving. All right, back to what I was trying to tell you. If I hit cancel, import canceled, I find that gets really annoying. It's better to just not do that. Just exit the sub. It'll usually be evident to the user that nothing happened, especially with something like an import. Save. All right. Let's import so that we just have them here. Okay, no. We need to clean up. So see how this ends open? That's kind of sloppy in my opinion. I'm not a perfectionist with end users. Like, I think that they can tolerate a lot more than people give them credit for, but we're gonna close it, and we're gonna do it before the message box. Because if we did it, that way it's gone and the message box appears, as opposed to the message box appearing with like the CSV just like sitting open in the background. Okay. I'm gonna have to try that again. I'll just do the update thing, so. Okay. We can actually turn off screen updating as a way to make it so it like doesn't even appear at all. Maybe I'll try it. This is why the videos go on, because I just can't help myself. Row performance settings. This is a way to basically goose up the speed. It like goes in manual calculation mode and like does a bunch of stuff to make it as fast as it possibly can. And then we'll turn them back off here. I don't actually know for sure if this is going to make the display thing go away or not. We'll see. Yeah, you don't even see it now. I think that's better. So use performance mode to both speed up the import to prevent screen updating so the data CSV never appears. And again, I'll make this workbook, the whole thing, I'll make it available so that, you know, if you guys are following along and you want to just have these examples, I'll give them to you. No problem. Just want this. All right. Let me just pause it for a minute, go get a drink. Okay. I'm back. If we're playing the game of Tetris, we don't really need this training wheel. We can just put it in here. You see. I don't know. I'm always looking for those. You never know when you're just gonna run out of space, so. Let's add a shortcut. Let's add a keyboard shortcut so that we can open this. Or so that we can run the import from a shortcut, and just to remind ourselves how those work. So the function name is, should have brought it with me, right there. Those shortcuts, and this one's gonna be Control-Shift-I. Control-Shift-I. Let's reload, see if it works. It does. I'm not gonna do it. I have high confidence that we hit the line. Although, I did swap out that Tetris one, so now I have high confidence. Okay. Let's look at the list view. I'm sorry, you know, when I have the screen split between the VBA editor and this, the form always loads over here instead of right here. Maybe that's something I can look into. Do all the fields. All right. Okay, I tell you right now, this ID field is not doing it for me. Get rid of that. When I started recording this training video, ID field was required. There'd be a thing like a validation rules, like ID has to be it. But I hated that ID field so much that I went and I removed it. It was kind of something that didn't need to be there anymore. It was a holdover from way earlier in the project, but I just couldn't stand that thing. Okay, so double click. We have no edit fields again. I'll let the ID come on this one. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, it's not bothering me too much there. The gray fields is because those are remote fields. Can't change them. Even if you can include them, I made it so that you can include them that way because they may be useful to reference. I mean, if we're trying to categorize this thing into a cost, it might be hard if we didn't see this information. So you can certainly bring them into the edit view. It just won't do anything when you save them. So let's make sure this works. I'm not going to put a real thing. Sorry. Save. It does. Okay. Let's see. So what we're going to do is basically now ChatGPT is basically going to be writing it's going to be saving into these fields instead of just dumping it in the worksheet. So we can import data, the LLM will like process the data, and then it'll save the values here. We're going to find the ones, they'll be flagged, and we'll see right away where there's issues. And we're going to put a layer of validation on top. So first things first though, it would be nice if we could visually see things like colors. We're going to make these, I'll show you how to color the rows based on whatever you'd like. So here's the class module that was created down here when we created the model. That weird space that always comes, I'll get rid of it, don't worry. Right here. So this already exists. It returns -1 is what this constant is. You can use the immediate window, by the way, if you just want to know the value. You can just type anything in here and see. Or you could do, I think, equal sign. Yeah. If you put the equal sign, it means like you're asking a question. It tells it that to tell you. If I just put it in there and did nothing, it would be like, what are you doing? So throw that little question mark in there. All right, so let's just first, instead of returning this -1, we'll say VB blue. You got VB blue, VB red, VB, I don't think they make an orange. I love orange, I don't know why. VB white, VB black, VB cyan. If I hit F2, yeah, you can see the whole family. So F2 opens up this Project Explorer. I don't use it too much, but it can show you all the members of the color constant. So there's magenta, yellow, or the ones I think I missed. Good to know about magenta, though. I honestly didn't know that existed. All right, let's load the list view again. everything's blue. Okay. Cool. So I see where the puck is going now. So right here, let's just get rid of all this. We don't need this stuff. Once you've changed these functions, it will not change it again. It will not change it. So even when you add and remove fields, when you do that, it does rebuild this whole module from scratch every time you change a field in your model. But it will preserve your functions for you, so you don't have to worry about that. If me.cost category equals needs context, then else, and if the current one, so me, if it's tagged as that need context, we're gonna make it red. Otherwise, it's gonna be blue. Throw a bookmark in there. Okay. Let's make one in needs context. Now it's red. There, you can do all sorts of kind of like whatever color you want. So you actually are not constrained at all to this VB blue, VB red. You can just do RGB. You know, I don't know. I'm just gonna make one up. I don't even know if this is valid. We're about to find out. Yeah, it's a really bad. Oh, well, now everything's red. This one's a slightly different red. So you can click on a cell, like let's go here, and just put a random color in there, and then go here to more colors, custom, and see the RGB here. So you can kind of shop around and get a color that you really like 31, 82, 225. 31, 82, 225. That's a nice blue. And since this is like a little bit of work to do, it will resolve, this RGB is a function, it will resolve to this long type. So we should be able to just swap that in if we wanted to, and we should get the same. We do. And then we could even go so far. We need to go over to constants anyway right now, because we're not going to leave this hard-coded. Can't remember what I called it. Cost category needs review. All right. So cost category needs review, and cost category, I think we need one for like office expense. Cost category supplies. Maybe it's just supplies, I'm not sure. I'll double check that. And then maybe your blue, cool color blue. So then you can sort of pin down the colors you like in that manner. I'm just checking that the, yeah, this is supposed to be office supplies. Pardon me. You know, if I let it linger for even a second, I will forget about it. Okay. So the way we want this to work is we want to be able to make sure that we want to be able to continuously make sure that the quality, that it's doing what we expect it to do. So the rules we're going to make is that if any business expense is tagged as needs context, there must be a follow-up question inputted. And if it's tagged as anything else, then follow-up question must be blank. Those are the two rules. You know, you could make all kinds of rules if this was your own thing. If it's over $500, then it can't be XYZ category, or whatever your business rules are. The limit is your imagination. Okay, so we basically have 5 states, 3 valid and 2 invalid. So we could have cost category is blank and follow-up question is blank. We can have cost category is not blank. And we can have needs contacts with a follow-up question. My notes are not so great, but basically unclassified, classified, and needs review. I think that's a better way of saying it. And the invalid states are just the follow-up question has text in it, but it's not needs context, and the inverse of that. We're about to program those rules, so I think it's okay. Business expense status. All right, so you're going to see a new construct. Business expense types. The enum. So I don't think anybody minds if I just copy it, do you? Oops. Just want this one. Okay. So the enums, and it is a short for enumeration, and it's just a number with a name. So that is enum. So notice when I call this function accepts enum, and I open up the arrow or the parentheses, see how I get these nice choices? It just like it sort of locks things in. The alternative, if you did it like this, you said like status is string, you would end up doing first of all, you'd get nothing. It would just say status. So you wouldn't know, am I supposed to type in like unclassified? Like, should it be unclassified? Small things like that, well, not only does it take you more time and cognitive burden to write it, but then it's also much more prone to risk. So we just use this enum, and then we can add it as a parameter, and we get this. The IntelliSense just gives this awesome sort of. I think you're getting the picture. Chip Pearson, there's a guy. If you ever want to learn anything like very, very deep, I don't know, I'm not even sure if he's still out there anymore. I tried emailing him one time, never wrote me back. But his stuff is really, really, he covers like everything you could ever imagine about Excel VBA. You know what? Since I'm going to give you guys this workbook, I will pool resources to do add Tim Hall's JSON converter. We'll fill this up with cool stuff. That way you guys can get it later. Let's see. Okay. So, we're going to write a little toString method here. So it's nice. The problem with these things, the weakness of enums, is that they're numbers. So like if we want to, for example, display the status of a business expense here, like we would have to show a number like 2, 3, 4, and that's just not very nice. It's nice in the code, but not nice for displaying to the end users. So the pattern I do is always the same. It's the name of the enum, business expense status underscore, and then toString. gonna return that. All right, and cool. E as enum. No, it is this. All right, E is just short for enumerator. So you're gonna pass it one of these things, and it's gonna give you back the name of the string. All right, so select case E and select case status unknown. Let's see, let me fix this up. Sorry. This would be another great one to just highlight this and send it to ChatGPT and just say, just do this, please. I don't feel like doing that right now. Is that all of them? We might clean this up a little more. Basically, this defaults to 0. So, like, if you have one of these things, and we just message box it here because it's just a number under the hood, it defaults to 0. So I draw a little bit of a distinction between forgetting to assign it, unknown meaning like because it's 0, versus if we were to pass this thing. If we were to pass it something like VB red, which is probably like a huge number. Forgot to return the output. And I forgot to tell you what a select case is. So we could have done if E equals status classified, then output equals status classified. Else, if E equals status needs review, then all the way to the very last and then end if. You could have done it like this. And I actually think there's some evidence that this will run slightly faster than a select case. I'm not sure. But I wanted you to see the select case. So it just says whichever one of these is, I think you can sort of, you can reason about it. I think you can reason. Let's message box this, invalid value. Invalid, I don't know, invalid value. But if we pass it like 2, status classified. All right, so we're going to write a unit test for this in a little while. Right now, we're going to take this over here to the class module. And we're going to go to the very bottom. So you've got your field functions, your getters and setters for the official fields, these sort of hybrid special guys. And then as far down as you want to go, you can make your own functions. So we're going to make one called status. And I'm actually going to speed it along a little bit and put it in. Another select case, me.cost category. So it's going to say if the cost category is blank, which is what it's going to default to, it's unclassified. If it's needs review, it's status needs review. Anything else, we're going to consider it classified. All right. So let's just, we'll put this in the list view. I'll teach you a little hack here. So status does not appear here because it's not officially a field. However, form registry, this is where those selections are. So it's just one of those registry sheets. And we can find business expense, the list view, and we can tack on our own functions here. This one we probably want it to be like right at the beginning, I think. Status. Each one is separated by a comma, CSV, and then we should see our statuses. And now we're going to make it color also by status. But what we really want to do is, I already said, like, we don't want to see the number there. We'd rather see a nice readable string. So we're going to make another function right here called status string. And we're just going to say status string equals business expense. Getting lazy, I'm just going to hit control space to string me.status. Okay? And then we're going to replace this right here with this. There they are. All right. Let's update the color function now. So right now it's just forking on this whether the cost categories needs review. This is the final one that I put in there. So there's some colors with the chip with Whoa. I put that one in there. There's just a few of them. I don't know, like output equals Whoa color. They're just, I wouldn't really use those. You can if you want to. I'd suggest, I think it'd be better for you to probably get your own colors. Let's see how it looks. All right. So black means it's done. Blue means it's like waiting. And red going on here? Doesn't look like red to me. The issue is that this should not be status classified. This should be status needs review. Cost category needs review. Needs context. Got it. I had the wrong. It's not. It isn't. It's needs context, not needs review. Maybe bad naming on my part. Bringing back the Whoa color. Red, strong. I just want to see what it looks like. Yeah. The VB red is just a little too bright for my liking. Okay, this is a good spot to freeze. Okay, the next thing that we are going to do is build some UDFs. So those are UDF is user defined functions. They're custom formulas. So we're going to do the count of total expenses, classified, not classified, needs review, and percent complete. Okay, so let's insert a module. And let's name this module business expense UDF. Every time so far I've been doing this option private module at the top, followed by this. We're not going to put this on this module. And the reason is, if this is option private module, then we will not be able to see the functions here at the worksheet level. Not here, because we want to see the functions at the worksheet level. I'm leaving these comments in case you guys look at this workbook later. So let's start by just stubbing the functions. Get number, expenses, total. Okay. How many were there? I think 4. Yeah. All right, we're gonna need classified, unclassified, and need review. One expense needs review, but I think this should be singular. All right, and for now, let's just do like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Saving equals get number expenses total equals get number expenses classified. You have to put these parentheses on at the end. Watch what happens if I take it off. It thinks I'm trying to refer to a name range. The parentheses in VBA and in Python and anywhere, these indicate something callable, like we're invoking something. Number expenses unclassified, and lastly, this one's just going to be needs review. Percent complete is going to be this, classified divided by total. I put my cursor here and I hit F4 and that locks it in. Otherwise, if we move things around, you guys probably know about that. Okay, let's write them. This one is going to be pretty simple. Get DB business expense, and then DB.record count. Save. Let's check it. Okay, that one is good. For this one and for the remaining 3, so for the remaining 3, we're going to build some intermediate functions, if you will, off this module on AppCommon. We're going to build 3 functions that return a collection of expenses that meet these criteria. And then in this, in this function, we'll call that function that's going to return the collection, and then we'll just take the count of it. And the reason is we want to have sort of one line of truth for what those records are. Sorry, I don't know. I'm finding it sort of hard to say that. All right, AppCommon. Business expense queries. All right. Get business expenses classified. This is long. We're going to do this sort of the long way first, the verbose way, as you would say, and then on the next one I'll cut it down. If record dot status equals, see how nice this enum is, imagine if it was like this, the status string, the one that we displayed, and you had to say, you know, classified. That is so fragile in terms of, you know, its likelihood of breaking. If we just changing the this like string, you know, if we just change this to be, you know, I don't know, like, I think that you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to do this. That's much safer. All right. And then we're going to say records.add. We'll load that record in. Having a nice balance of white space, meaning these lines, can make readability better. And readability is important. And this is not going to be long. It's going to be a collection. One line instantiation of the collection is fine here. Let's check it out over here. Okay. It's good enough for me for right now. Let's do unclassified. Now I'm going to do it a little bit more, I'm going to do it a better, more efficient way. I don't need to dim the collection here because that'll be handled inside of the DB. Set records equal to DB dot, well, I am going to need here. I do think maybe I should. I don't think I should chain in my first examples. Chain those together. I think it would be easier for you to understand like this. Get records by attribute. What is the name of the attribute that we want to get? It's status. And what is the one? It is unclassified. Okay. The lion's share of them are not classified. And then we need one more for needs review. This one I'm going to drop down even more. We're going to drop down to full, absolute minimal. Oops, I meant to close that. Immediate window. All right, and this is going to be need review. Status needs review. Okay, all of them. I want to emphasize this and this. Both of these guys could be written like this and probably should be. In fact, I would say definitely should be. But I showed you the progression of, you know, the most naive way to a little bit better to now we're down, we've distilled it in that Tetris game I keep alluding to one line. All right, let's go back to the UDFs and let's just bring this guy with us. So this is just going to be this, this, this. So we're going to get the collection from our other function and just return the count. And this guy, this last one is just going to be, all right. Recalculate. Something's going on. My bad. Much better. Okay. I caused a little error there. In the UDF one here, no. In app common here, here's what I did. So I was basically, I don't even know what it thought I was trying to do. This probably should have failed compile. In my opinion, that should have failed compile, but the VBA engine like compiler is not very, it's pretty lenient. It's not very strict. Not as strict as I would like for it to be. Okay, so but you see what we have here now. So let's test this out a little bit. So let's say let's classify one of the unclassified ones. So we have one classified one right now. This one doesn't count as classified because it needs context. So let's classify another one. Okay. And then now we have two. That is how you do UDFs. Let me show you a thing. With UDFs, let's condense this, Tetris. You want to be very careful. UDFs need to be like blinding fast. You should not have debug prints. You should not have a bunch of logic. You should even avoid loops in something that is going to be in a UDF like the chain, a call chain. So when I start this and I hit this function, it goes through a chain of calls. So watch when I hit enter. That message box is getting hit. So definitely you would not want to have message boxes in any kind of control flow that a UDF could hit. But watch this. Let's see if I do, this is going to just do a full recalculate of the whole workbook in addition to the stuff that the add-in is doing. But unrelated to the add-in is that this gets hit multiple times. Did you see that? Once, twice. So there's a calculation engine that is in Excel, and they're constantly, I'm using Office 365 here, but they're constantly tuning and tweaking the calculation engine to try and make it faster. And one of the things it does is like it has to resolve, like when you have a chain of formulas, like this formula equals this formula, dependence, where one formula depends on another, it makes multiple passes. So the UDF could get invoked more than one time during the workbook recalculation. So that's another reason, not only, it's another reason that UDFs really, you need to be mindful about speed. And for the record, I think that you should always be in automatic calculation mode. I think that manual calculation mode should be a last resort. We showed during the imports, we looked at this Whoa performance settings. That, when you turn this on, that'll slam it into manual calculation mode. When you turn it off, it will restore it to whatever your original calculation mode was, which hopefully was automatic. But if you were originally in manual, when you turn the performance settings off, it'll leave you back where you started from. All right, that's UDFs, and this is a good spot to pause. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at is validation and testing, and specifically error bank. So you've got this validate and test button, and they are essentially the same thing. The difference is what they are going to, what they're going to test. So they both have one thing in common, and that is that they use error bank. So demo error bank. Create error bank. You'll see in a minute that there's a lot of situations where you have multiple error banks running around at the same time. So when you create one, you pass in This is just letting it know like where it was originally created. But you could just pass in, you know, it's not related to any sort of precise thing. All right, so ArrowBank has a bunch of methods in it. These asserts. So assert array contains, assert DB model empty, assert equal, assert false, assert falsee. You'll see the difference in just a moment for that. And we use these asserts to test the program. So my example is right here. Let's say that we have a function called add two numbers, and we want to test it. All right, so let's just see result equals add two numbers 5 and 6. That should be 11, right? Yeah. Okay. So we could say eb.assert equal add two numbers 5, 6. So the first thing that we're going to pass into the assert is, you know, a value, and then we're going to pass what we expect it to be equal to. And then the third thing is just a note. I always just put this like number T1, T2, T3, unless there's something specific that I want to say. Like, I can't think of an example right now. But when this assertion fails during testing, you're going to get this message. You'll see in a second, but it's a way to give yourself a clue, like a hint, to resolve the issue faster. Okay? So I usually have like an arrange block, and then I'll say check the standard case. Okay? And then right here, one assertion, everything passed. But let's say that there was like a problem in here. Like somehow you slipped on the keyboard and there's an extra 1. It's going to fail. It's going to say assert equal 12 is not equal to 11. Oh, and there's my there's the failure message at the front. And it also tells you, sorry, it also tells you where, demo ArrowBank. So what function failed, and a little information. So that's where those T1s are useful when you're trying to track down a failure quickly. I go to the test, I find the test function, and then I just look for which one of these it is. Otherwise, without this, that's actually not. It's not as clear, right? It says missing note, and it just says 12 is not equal to 11. So it's going to be harder. It's going to add time for me to track it down. We want to think like NASCAR. You know, in NASCAR, when they have to do the pit stop and they change the tires, it's like really fast. You want to think like NASCAR. You should be able to fix it. Make it as easy as possible to fix a test for yourself. All right. You also usually want to check the error cases. So check error case, passing a non-number. All right. So on error, resume, next. Cats and anything, doesn't really matter. Let's just see what it would. That's a bad example. Here, let's take this off. Let's take this off. Let's just let it error for a second. All right, watch for a second here. So I'm going to leave this just like this. I'm going to save Excel. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to go to that test function on the demo module. Now we get a type mismatch like I expected. So I've said this like 3 times now. There's sometimes like little peculiar things will come up with Excel, and I think this shows a good example of when things aren't making sense, just close out and reopen it. And that's a design time thing. That'll happen when you're moving code around. I don't think that's going to happen to you much at runtime when you're actually using the software. It happens when you're developing it. All right, so the error that we got though was a type mismatch, error number 13. So this is a little bit of a contrived example, but what we would do is we would just say eb.assert equal error.number 13. Should be a type mismatch error. Okay. Oh. Seem to have forgotten about the intentional error I put in there. All right, now everything's passing. So it is a contrived example, but I want you to see it's like when you want to test an error, put the on error resume next, do the thing that causes the error, and then assert the error number. A lot of times I'll also assert that that there's some text in the error. So this error is a global object. You might say like eb.assert string contains error.description, and then if you've taken the time to make a custom message that when you raise the error that you want the user to see, like for example, if they're trying to look up a field, for my example, if the user is trying to look up call like classdb.getRecords by attribute, and they pass in an attribute name that doesn't even exist, I want to make sure that the error description says, this field does not exist. So I would assert that that the invalid attribute was in the error that the string of the error description contained the invalid field name. So that way I can just, every time I run these tests, I have guarantee that I haven't screwed anything up in my last session of coding. And the last one is this on error go to 0. Why do we put that there? And the answer is, if we didn't put it here, this error.number, this makes error.number go back to 0. This line does. It resets it. If we left this off, and let's say we're running like 5 tests, when the next test starts, it's going to start off with that old error.number just like sitting in there, like a residual, and you don't want that. So on error go to 0, and another thing that I do, in any test that does this on error resume next pattern, I do debug.assert error.number equals 0 at the very end. And there's been a few times where that's caught me. So automatically, as soon as I do, in any sort of testing situation, as soon as I do on error resume next, I throw this down at the very end. Okay. Let's see. All right, so now I'm going to show you an actual test function from the add-in. Like, so this is like a bread and butter, what a unit test looks like for me. So here's the function under tests, string extract numbers, and here's the test for that function. I always name my test functions get test errors, then the name of the function that it's testing. So this is not going to, here we actually rendered the errors. We called this render dynamic summary. That's what opens up the terminal and whatnot. But that does not normally go in a test function. So this, the way it works, if we say like message box, string extract numbers, let's put in like FFF, 222, bunch of random stuff, then 333. So it's pulling just the numbers out. All right, but if you think about it, there's a lot of subtle behaviors in there that we want to pin down and we lock. So here are the tests. First, we're making sure that it returns a string. And the reason that we want to return a string and not a number is that sometimes you have a leading 0. And I'll tell you where that comes up a lot is in zip codes. So if you try to make a number like this, see what it just did? Watch. I put a 0 and then I type some stuff in. I'm going to hit enter and watch that first 0. It's gone. So I wanted to make sure that this function is going to return a string type. And this is another example of why instead of just putting T1, T2, T3, I did put a message here because I think I might be confused in the future. I get here about, well, why wouldn't it just return a number? So this is to remind myself, no, Mark, it needs to return a string, and here's why. So we test, the basic cases of 3, 2. We test. I always put the main cases at the top, and then as we go down, I test weirder and weirder things. So I want to make sure that there's no decimals. I want to make sure that passing an empty string or no numbers works. There's the leading zeros, and there's some extra spaces in there. So I'm just looking for all the different weird sort of things that could come up, and I want to pin them down right now. I may not actually be depending on these things. I may not be depending on this behavior at all, but I still just want to capture it because if anything changes in the future, maybe this test fails in the future because I had to make a change to it. That's okay. But I just want to get like a notice. I want something to remind me that it happened. Here's just some of the other assert methods that are around. If there's a particular assert method that you think is helpful, let me know and we can add it in there. We're going to use a few of these in a little while. One of them is assert VBA procedure exists. So for the prompt, remember that we added the callback as a field. I've got to get rid of that UDF message box. This paste answers adjacent right. That is sitting. It's sitting here. But what would happen if we just rename this? We might go in here, say, all right, we're going to do a global rename and name it to something else. Well, you might forget to update the worksheet value. So right away, when we're testing the prompt objects, we want to make sure that every single one of them, that the procedure exists. So we just call, eb.assert equal assert VBA procedure exists prompt.VBA callback. And then if that function gets renamed, we're going to catch it. So I think that's sort of like the essence of this sort of how to test and some of the thinking behind it. All right, so stop this section. Okay, so now you know how error bank works and you understand the premise of testing. But look at now the subtlety and difference between validation and testing. And validation is sort of something that I started doing myself. I was trying to do everything as testing, but then it just wasn't quite right. And so it ended up, validation became its own thing. Validation is testing the current data that's in there, okay? Whereas, and it changes. So if you're in a different workbook or you're in a different project with different expenses, validation might fail. But testing would be the same no matter what your expense data was. The test results would be the same. So let's just make that clear. So we're going to say, let's see. Make sure I am recording. Good. Private sub, validate, single expense record. Say business expense record. Maybe I'll remember to replace that. Maybe I won't. Won't really matter. All right, dim record as class business expense. We just need for this any record with a warm pulse. So set record equal to get db business expense dot get first record or nothing. If we had no expenses in the database, this would be nothing. But we do have expenses. All right, let's just make sure that we got a pulse. We do. Okay. So we want to check expenses tagged for review also have a non-blank follow-up question. And we want to check expenses with a non-blank follow-up question are also tagged for review. These are business rules that we set up. If record.cost category equals cost category needs review, then else if record.follow-up question is not equal to blank, then message fail equals follow-up question cannot be blank for expenses classified as and this failure message here is going to be follow-up question should be blank unless expense is classified as. Okay? I'm going to put this up here. As a general rule, I'll only put one of these two up here, either message fail or message, but I won't do both. And the reason is sometimes you'll make a message fail and then you'll pass message in for the assertion note. It's just an accidental oversight, and it happened to me one too many times, so I made a rule not to do that. Assert equal record dot cost category. Cost category needs review. And this is message fail. And this is message fail. So this is ultimately what this is going to do is scan over all the records. But I just want you to see right here. Great time to pass, compile, and save. Back to home. All right. Notice no assertions were made. Well, for one, we're only checking one record. But for two, we're only going to look at a record if the cost category is needs review. All right? And or if the follow-up question is not blank. Any other record it's not even going to consider it. So we could just let's just make one failure for one of them. So it's doing the, guys, I gotta get rid of that stupid UDF thing. All right, so it's only testing this first one, the ergonomic keyboard thing. So let's set it to needs context, but let's not put in a follow-up question. Okay. Technically, that breaks our rules, so it should fail. Okay, cool. I wanted you to see this too. So why is this not failing? All right, because it is So it is blank. What's going on here? And the answer is like a very subtle thing is going on. And that is, let's see, I'm going to say pretty value type. There's a whole bunch of pretty functions. So if you just start typing in pretty whatever, it gives you all these different things that you can get a more friendly representation of for humans to read. And then let's also do pretty value type true blank. A. True blank. Sure. All right. Empty. Okay, its type is empty. The second one's type is string. So because that worksheet cell where it's pulling the value from is actually, there's just like this very almost silly distinction between a blank string versus truly an empty cell. And so that is where this assert truthy, assert falsy comes from. Assert truthy, this one should fail. There we go. Follow-up question cannot be blank. Assert truthy. Value is not truthy, and it tells you it's empty. Falsy is the opposite. So truthy is not a VBA thing. Truthy and falsy, you'll see them in Python, JavaScript. 0 would be falsy. Any non-zero number would be truthy. An empty collection would be falsy. An empty array would be falsy. An empty dictionary would be falsy. So it's sort of like, if the thing like has any substance to it, it's truthy. But if it's like 0, a blank string, empty, null, that's considered falsy. So it's just a broader, it's a broader check, I suppose. And if this was me, even in production, I'd probably be like, no, watch out, it will be empty, not blank. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to do the same thing that how we kind of progressed over here on App Common. We went from this to this to this. We're going to do a similar progression here. So this is like our first version, if you will. All right. And now in the second version, we're going to validate all of them. So let's say validate all business expense records. This is going to change into a function that returns error bank, and it is going to take record. So we're parameterizing this. This all goes away. And instead of rendering down here, we're going to return the error bank. So it's starting to look more like what this function does, where it returns instead of rendering. Error bank. Actually here. DMEB main as error bank, because we're going to be merging them together. All right. So loop through each of the business expenses, pass them to this function, which is just going to analyze that one business expense and make sure that it's following these rules. Then that will be inside of this error bank. And then here, set EB main equal to EB main dot merge banks. You can pass as many error banks as you want in there. Pass EB record. And finally here, we'll render them all. 2 errors. So follow-up question should be blank unless expense is classified as needs context. So see, before we were only hitting this one. Now we're hitting both of these ones. Okay? That's the version 2. And finally, for the grand finale, we're going to take this logic right here, and we're going to internalize it inside of the class itself. So we're going to go to class business expense. We're going to go to the bottom, the validation caboose, and we're going to make a function called get validate errors. It takes no arguments because we're already within the context of one business expense. We just say me.followup question. So let's put this in here. I think like we don't really need to see this right now. I don't know. All right, so here, if I run compile, I should see some issues. It's like, what is record? There is no record. It's because I brought this code from over there. It's because it is the record. Me.cost category, me.followup question. We are on the class, and then here, yeah, this has got to be here. I think that'll pass. It does. All right. Let's go back over here. This whole guy is going to die. And now we are just going to say EB record equals record.getValidateErrors. Good time to save. 2 errors. So we're putting the logic, we want to keep the logic as close to the business expense itself as possible. And you can't get any closer than on the actual class module. Putting my cursor in this get validate errors, shift F2 to fly to it. I'll keep reminding you about that. Very, very useful trick. So you can see that, like, depending on what expenses are in this workbook, this validation could fail or not fail. So validation is very much dependent on the data that's in the workbook. Thought I had a good link over here. I do. All right, so this website, this is where, you know, you'll get the add-in and stuff. If you go here right now, you're not going to get anything. You won't see anything. You'll just if I open it in private browser, you'll see. So registration is blocked at this current moment, but there is documentation, and you know, we've done some of this stuff. The forerunners. So it's just telling you I wrote some documentation here. I need to push it up. I need to deploy this. I meant to do that before I started this, but I didn't. Sorry. Disregard that, but it'll explain the difference between everything I've just told you is what you'll see there. It'll explain the difference between validation and testing and give you some error bank examples. So you'll have another reference besides digging through this video. And I'll put in the ribbon This part's called the ribbon up here. I'll put some sort of direct link so you can just click and get straight to the documentation page really easily. All right, so that is a good spot to pause. Okay, let's land this. We made this validate function. We have 2 errors, and we're just going to leave those in there for now. We need to move it somewhere where this runner is going to get it. It won't get it sitting here on the AA demo module. So let's save one of those F12 saves. Okay. Let's take this guy here and move him to a new module. Validate business expense. And then the top of every validation and test module they're really pretty much identical. They look like this. Usually I put a message fail as string and then something like this here to denote, like, this will sometimes be public if you want to call it from a command button, if you want the ability to just, on a certain page to have a worksheet to have a button to validate just one set of records without running the whole suite. You can do that, but we're not going to do that. Okay? And then this needs to comply with the requirements. So let's run it without the requirements. Let's just break the rules and see what it does. The target module does not contain any valid procedures to run, validate business expense, canceling operation, common culprit module name is case sensitive. Okay. And it's telling me again, all right, it wants validate as the name of the module, that's fine, and the procedure prefix get validate errors. That we do not have. Okay? So get validate errors, business expense records. We're no longer going to render in here the error bank. We're just going to return these errors. Because you can imagine there could be, 5, 6, 8, 15 different validate functions. And when we run this validate single module, it's going to sweep up all of these functions, any that exist here, and it's going to run all of them, and it's going to merge all the error banks together, and it's going to give us a single report on how it did. Okay? What did I do? Function. It's going to return an error bank. So before it was a sub because we weren't returning it, we were rendering the error bank at the bottom. Now it's a function. All right, let's try it. So I'll show you what it is. Forgetting to define a WB host parameter in test reset validate procedures. It's that one. WB host as workbook. Let's try it again. Cool. These are our 2 failures that we had before. Good. So that's the same. But we want to see those failures when we run it the whole enchilada. Most of these tests running now are add-in tests that are just testing. Oh, well, we have a 3rd error. So these 2 we know about. This one we don't. Business expense. Okay. Is missing a return type. Signature missing return type. It's on this class business expense, and the name of the function is get validate errors. So the add-in is also checking for you for, things that I commonly run into. Error bank. So we forgot to include a return type. Every function should have a return type. Technically, it still works without it, but you should have a return type there. Let's try it again just to be sure that I did this right. Save, validate. 2 errors. Just our 2. The ribbon thing, these often go out. When you're in development mode, you're crashing constantly, it loses a reference to the ribbon. I can explain that better sometime. Not right now, though. Okay. I'm satisfied with this. Other notes. I did have one other note. In our little tests, our original test that we did here, add two numbers, I wanted to tell you an example of like a really bad test. So this is testing, adding two numbers. All the tests passed now. But watch if I did this. 2 plus 2, asserting that equals 4. Why would that be a bad test? So it passes, but watch if I throw a multiply. If instead of adding, we multiply the two numbers, everything still passed. So that's the kind of thing where you have to think about the test a little bit and make sure that there really are testing that the tests are covering you correctly. So now it fails, and this is 7. I mean, I usually will write more than just one assert. Probably 25% of the code base, maybe more, of the add-ins code base is just unit tests. And that percentage, that ratio is rising all the time. All right, I'm going to cut it here, and then we're going to build the actual, what we've been building towards. We're going to hit ChatGPT, and we're going to write directly into the model. That should flow pretty fast and should be pretty cool. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, this is the original base text that we use for our selection-based model prompt, and this is the new one. They're very similar. The difference is that the new one, this one is asking for it to instead of just returning one category per index, we want it to return a little dictionary for each of the expenses we give it. With it has both the category with a C key, and in this FQ is supposed to be follow-up question. So let's take this prompt here. Let's go to prompts. Here's the model one. I'm just going to feed in the base text. Save. Okay. And then let's go to make a new model. Module. AI classify model. Let's steal everything from here and we'll just update it from our selection-based version. Go here, so everything that's selection, let's just try and do model. This we're not even going to need. This we're not even going to need. That's going to change. Not going to need. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is, let's actually call this, where did I put it here? Classify expenses next 10 records. This is going to become model. So we're going to get that record that we just saved the new base text into. Instead of getting the selection one, we're going to get the model one. So it's going to have a different base text. Final prompt, this is going to become model. Selection column is not going to exist. There is no selection anymore, but we are going to have to pass something different there. Okay. This can all stay the same. We're going to have to save in the callback to this prompt. We need to put something here. Don't let me forget that. Like last time. The fork on interceptor is going to stay the same. All of this is going to stay the same. So what we need to do is update this so that it makes the new prompt correctly. And we need to make a callback, which is going to take ChatGPT's answers and write those values into the model. Let's start with the text. So what we're going to need to do, we know that, where's that model? The other one. For God's sakes. Just look at it in here. I'm just thinking. We're going to send it basically the same thing as before. We're going to need two dictionaries. Dict index to ID and index to expense description. All right. This can come down here. And let's use app common dot. Remember we did this one right here. So we're going to query for all of the existing expense records that are not yet classified, because we don't want to classify one that's already classified. And we said right here we're doing the next 10, so we're going to need also next 10 unclassified expenses. And where we're going to get this from, slice collection. What collection are we slicing? The unclassified one. We'll start at 1 and we'll stop at 11. So I just copied Python here, where it includes, when you slice like a list or an iterable in Python, it'll include the first index that you provide. But the last one, 11, is not included. So if we want to get 10, we need to go up to 11, because it's not gonna take 11. Let's call it a half open interval or half closed interval. There are a lot of good reasons. If you're wondering why this isn't 10 records, there are good reasons why it's not. In fact, I've noticed that almost everything in Python seems to be really, the more I look behind it and the more I think about it, the more that it just makes sense. Debug.assert next 10. There shouldn't be more than 10 in here. And if there are, I would probably want to stop the program. All right, so dim record as class business expense. We're going to fill up these dictionaries now. One of them we're going to basically pass in to generate this text. It's going to be the one with the expense descriptions. And then the other one we're going to pass to the callback. So this little index that we're creating is like a temporary ID, if you will. I don't think we want to send the real ID to ChatGPT, especially considering those IDs are like ungodly long. Index is long for index equals 1 to dict next 10. Let's exit the sub here and just make sure everything so far is okay. Set. I forgot the set operator. I forgot count. I'm losing it, guys. That, I'm not going to accept responsibility for that right now. Nor will I accept responsibility for that. Probably should have just wrote it from scratch, huh? Should I start this over? I don't want to start over. All right. looking to see 1 through 10 here. All right, let's load up the dictionaries. Dict index to id dot add index to id dot add index, and we're gonna need to we need the record. This out. All right. Here. All right, 2 dictionaries. One of them, here, I can print them both out. All right, so our first dictionary is the 10 numbers, and it maps to the actual expense ID. So when we're using the callback function, we're going to use this. We're going to get back an index. ChatGPT is going to give us back the index. It's going to look like wherever it is, not this one. Close out of that damn one. And it's going to look like this. So it's going to give us back this. But from this response, we need to be able to map that back to one of the actual records. And since we're not giving it the real ID, we're not sending this to ChatGPT. We're going to use this dictionary to do that. And then the other dictionary is just giving these 10 numbers, which we know that this number 6, when ChatGPT gives the answer for number 6, we know that that number 6 goes to this ID. Okay? Need these. All right, so to make the prompt, we're going to do this. Same little dumb text generator function, and this one's definitely going to need this. The choice text is going to be the same. The allowed expense category choices, that's going to be the same, but I am going to do one thing in the quest to like the constant Tetris. See how this choice range, we're saying range to horizontal strings, and we're passing in the choice range. We can Tetris this. Let's just take this, the value for that variable, and let's plug that in here. We don't really need this. All right, and the only other change is expense text. This is going to be dictionary to string. All right. Let's debug print, so final prompt, base text. Let's get a look at the final prompt, see how it looks. I messed up. I forgot to put as dictionary here. This line is too long. We have to break it up. Sometimes it is better to just write a module from scratch than it is to try and adapt the old one. All right. Let's see. Let's send it to ChatGPT and see if it sends something back that looks reasonable. I don't know. I mean, it didn't give it to me in that usual nice like code formatted. Oh, I'm not logged in. I'm in this private browser thing. That looks much better. I think I just, was considering me like a random person on the internet. I don't know. Let's get out of this. Okay, response looks fine. Let's uncomment all of this. Let's get rid of this. Let's make the callback. Private sub, classify business expense from JSON. All right, what do we do here? Index to ID, dictionary, response as dictionary. Data dict is going to be each of those inner dictionaries. So each of these is going to be like 10 of these that are going to be in there. And they're going to have keys of C and FQ for the cost category and the follow-up question. And the index. So the index is what's going to link this to this. All right, for each index in response dict. Record ID equals dict index to ID. We loaded numbers in here, so we added this index. That's definitely a number. But we're going to be getting back from ChatGPT a string. Just that's what we put in the prompt. Maybe we would do it differently if this was more than an example application. So in order to get the dict from the index, we're going to need to do a number. So this is CL. That means coarse to long. C string means force to string. So if you say like C string 2, that'll get you 2. If you say C long 2, that'll get you 2. So from a number to text, from text to a number. I sort of wish that the dictionary wasn't type sensitive, but it is. All right. Inside the response dict is going to be a string of the index, because this is the response dict. Those keys are strings. All right. We know that we expect this data dict should have 2 keys, C and FQ. So these are pragmatic sanity checks. All right, set record equal to db.getRecord by ID. Record ID. So because we saved them up here, we saved in this one the index, we put the real record ID, that long garish string. So now we're going to get the long garish string out from the same dictionary to sort of complete the link or cross the bridge. And then we're going to use that real garish ID to get the actual record. Debug.print, updating next business expense record ID equals. And this is it, record.cost category equals data dict, C. And this one is FQ, follow-up question. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. All right, so after we make the prompt, we can load one thing into the partial function in advance. This is the thing that we can load. So we know that this callback here is going to need, it's going to need this index to ID. So we can do that. It does not need the actual original expenses. We're sending that to ChatGPT. but it does need the index so that we can get back to the right record ID. And it's going to need the response dict from ChatGPT. We can't load that right now. So we're loading the one that we have. And then either our function on AI core or prompt interceptor, depending what the setting is, that entity will tack on the final argument, which is going to be the ChatGPT's response parsed to an object, a dictionary in this case. All right. We're going to make this public. Good, it is. And we'll put a command button so we can run it right from the home sheet next to our formulas. And we can watch our work just evaporate. And we need this here, before I forget. We need to set the callback in the, because I think it's still blank, remember? Here. No, I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. Properties. Classify next 10 expenses. All right. All the other buttons will grow to accommodate that one's need. Great time to save. I don't really want that there. Okay. Here we go. We have 2 classified record now. We should have 12 after this is done. Good. I'm going to hit recalculate. There they are. Let's do it again. Here, wait, no. So it's not going to recalculate your whole workbook every time you write to an object. So when we're writing these things in here, it's not going to just go recalculate all the UDFs. And that's a good thing because it would be really slow. So every time we do a big batch update, we need to make a call to reload. So I'm going to say, I'll do it here. Whoa, reload database complex. I think a lot of those reloads, they'll go away. Those aren't meant to be exposed to you right now, or they maybe some of them aren't even meant to exist at all. We want to do a full reload. Reload db complex recalculate in order to be sure the formulas on the home sheet are updated. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. This one wants caller. Sorry, guys. It wants the caller. So I really need to practice these more. All right. It's running, it's running, it's running. Boom, 22. $32. Now, I mean, you might not do them all 10. You might do more than 10 or whatever. So we're just going through them, and we can see if we go to these records, we're getting the cost categories. These are the ones that are still left that are not classified, but GPT is just like filling these all in for us. They look pretty good. Obviously, you would tune the prompt, or you would know about your circumstances better than I do. but you can gather the idea here. Okay, so we did it. What we have left on my docket here is a bunch of unit tests, unit test fixtures, a bunch of unit tests. Everything that's left is unit tests. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it right here, and then I'll do the unit test in the next one. This just seems like a good spot to it's a good spot to cut. See you later.